Hi class, today we're going to be looking at chapter 20 and community ecology. And so species interactions is our first part. If you're using your notes packet, you can fill this in as we go. To start with, we're going to have a couple definitions. Predation is when one species benefits and the other species gets eaten. So we have a predator-prey relationship. Predator-prey adaptations are things like mimicry, secondary compounds, and physical abilities. So I'll give you a couple things here that you can write into your notes packet if you are doing that. So mimicry, basically it is just when a harmless species replicates a poisonous. It's kind of like making a copy of itself. So, not of itself. It's making a copy looking like something that is poisonous so that it has less chance of being eaten. Secondary compounds are plant defenses. With chemicals. Some examples are thorns, or things like poisons or poison ivy would be an example. Okay, and then physical abilities is number 3, and things like, it would kind of fall in that other category, like camouflage could be an example. You can see here an example of mimicry. I don't know if you remember, there's a little saying that goes with this. If you've done Boy Scouts or something like that, you might have remembered it. Can you guess which snake is the mimic? The one on the left is a scarlet king snake and is the mimic. The coral snake on the right is the poisonous snake. Secondary compounds, some examples, plant defense chemicals. And then physical abilities. Camouflage would be an example. All right, competition is caused when a niche overlaps for 2 or more species. And it can lead to a few things: reduction in the number of either species, so one of the sets of species loses out and doesn't have enough food. The elimination of one of the 2 competitors. So one might just reduce in size, the population size, or one could be eliminated completely. So with that, we have competitive exclusion, and this is where one species is eliminated due to competition for the same resource. The example here are bacteria graph, and you can see that when these are grown separately, if you take a look there, grown separately, our 2 species of bacteria survive really well. They reach their carrying capacity, and they do really well. But if they're grown together, one outcompetes the other. So the one here in blue outcompetes the one here in red, which ends up dying off. Resource partitioning is a way to reduce competition. So this is a pattern of resource use in which species reduce their use of shared resources. So there's less competition because they decide, you know what, how about you guys live there, we'll live over here, we'll all get enough food and we don't have to worry about eliminating one or the other. So our example here is barnacles. We have a group, if we're looking at this, they could potentially live in this entire space, which we talked about in the last section. This would be their fundamental niche, that entire space. But instead, they choose to live in a set of that, a small section of that space that's considered their fundamental niche. So this group lives here and this group lives here, and it reduces the amount of competition they have. Another way to reduce competition is character displacement. And so this is when anatomical differences occur due to evolution, and it reduces their competition. So they're fighting for a different set of food. They're competing for a different location to live. And so it reduces the amount of competition they have among each other, and more of them can survive at that point. Okay, our next thing is symbiosis, which is a relationship between different species living in close contact with each other. And we have 3: parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. So the first one, parasitism, is when one species benefits while the other species is harmed. And we have some examples here that you can see in the picture. We have a tapeworm. This is the end of a tapeworm to show you kind of what it looks like, and then a tick. So our 2 types, ectoparasite lives outside And an endoparasite lives inside the organism. Mutualism. Both species benefit from one another. An example is pollinators and plants. Pollination is the most important mutualistic relationship on Earth. So the bees provide help to the plants, and the plants give the pollen to the bees. And the bees help to fertilize the different plants. And then commensalism is when one species benefits while the other is not affected at all. So our example here, there's a couple examples, sharks and remora fish, or the cattle egrets, the birds, they feed on insects that the buffalo force out of their hiding places from grazing. So the birds are benefiting, but the buffalo really aren't getting anything from that. Probably annoyed by all the birds around them. The sharks and the remoras, kind of the same thing. The remora fish gain a couple things. Sometimes they'll get the extra food that kind of comes out of the shark's mouth, but they also get protection. So here's an example. Ticks live and feed on other animals. They suck blood from these animals for food. Dogs may pick up ticks from the outdoors. The ticks cause skin irritation on the dogs. The ticks also transmit diseases to the dogs that they are carrying. So which type is this? Give you a second to look at that. And in your notes packet, you can just draw an arrow if you'd like. The example is parasitism. Our next one, snapping shrimp have poor vision. They depend on their goby fish roommate to give the danger signal whenever predators approach. The goby fish guides the shrimp back home if they wander too far. Goby fish who don't have a place to hide are quickly eaten. They find a shrimp roommate who digs a hole for both of them to live in. Kind of nice, isn't it? So you have this example on your notes packet as well, and that would be an example of mutualism. They both benefit. One thing that you can do is kind of go through these questions, make sure that you can answer each of these and be able to answer them, kind of like a little review for you right here. In your notes packet, you can also make up your own examples for parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism.